Welcome, everyone, to this live webinar. It's wonderful to have you all here, and I'm thank you very much, sweetheart. My husband helps me. Speaking of love, welcome to this webinar. This webinar is about, as I recall, love, compassion, and energy healing. So it's a very sweet topic. It's a very nice, kind of bright, cheerful topic. I'm really happy you guys are all here. What I'd like to do is start with a brief overview of what is energy healing, and then follow that with 3 minutes of silence, followed by prayer of gratitude, followed by a dive into today's topic. Okay, so for the new people, what is energy healing? I've come to understand, after many years of doing this work, that energy healing is essentially a technology for using the vehicle of the mind as the instrument for experiencing one's full potential. And everyone's full potential is to be healthy and whole and happy and living the life that your soul came to this earth to live, right? Fulfilling the heart's desire and satisfying one's own personal needs as well as the needs of the divine within each one of us. Something like that, essentially. And as long as the soul manages to traverse that path, the means of overcoming challenges and problems and of healing from illnesses, all that means is at hand. It is accessible. And energy healing essentially uses the mind, intellect, sometimes the senses of perception. And I think maybe some energy healers more than I do will use other areas. For example, some energy healers will recommend aromatherapies. And aromatherapies engage the sense of smell, right, to support healing. However, the energy healing that I'm offering, and thank you all for being with me for this, is more directly on the level of consciousness. It's more directly consciousness as a means of our consciousness, our mind, our intellect as the vehicle or the instrument by which the healing occurs, because it can happen through any of the senses of perception, or it can happen through mind and intellect and ego. These are the 8 fundamental natures or vehicles for reaching the source of creation. And so in this energy healing, we're using consciousness as the medicine, consciousness itself. And of course, we all have the reason it's so beautiful and so elegant is that we all have consciousness, and we all are very adept at focusing our attention already since we were born in very specific ways. So it's not such a big leap for anybody to then get used to moving their attention in a way that supports highest health. So that's what we're doing. And it is a huge honor for me to be your guide through this process and to be the voice of the process. It tends to go into very abstract places, but I am always doing my best to find the words to describe those levels of experience which are very abstract, but are also accessible to all of us. It's just that we're not used to it, that's all. So as I offer you this lexicon or this system of describing the abstract, then you can adopt it yourself. And when you can describe those levels of your own experience that have hitherto been indescribable, then you gain a kind of mastery over them, you gain access to them, you gain access to those areas of your consciousness and those levels of your own personal power that weren't so accessible before because you didn't have a way to describe them. So part of what I'm doing is I'm just describing it to you. But the other thing that's happening is together as a group, we're kind of focusing our attention in these various areas. And as we do that, deeper understanding is uncovered. So I always end up learning things on these webinars. And that's one of the great fun for me, things that's fun for me is to do this with you, because even though you can see me and I can't see you with my eyeballs, I can't see you, in my heart, I can see you. And I know that we are together. And it's our union that is so powerful and creates context for the uncovering of newer, deeper, more profound levels of understanding of exactly the mechanics of just how does consciousness heal the body? Because that's what energy healing, in a nutshell, that's what energy healing is. Consciousness healing the body. So thank you for joining me for this ride, for this adventure this evening. Anyway, I'm very happy to be here. I would like to start, as I always do, with 3 minutes of silence. And the reason is that the fundamental basis of energy healing and the mind and consciousness and everything, awareness, everything that we're doing and everything that we're using, all of our tools, everything, is the eternal, unbounded, absolute ocean of pure being that is at the source of creation. It is the creator. It is, if one is, anybody who's with me, who's very religious, it is the creator. It is the Lord of all, the God of all. It is that foundation of all of us. So we want to take a few minutes right at the beginning and connect in and honor that level of everybody's deepest truth. I'm going to ask you to close the eyes. After 3 minutes, I'll ask you to open the eyes. Please take a minute to not open the eyes too fast, because it's nice to bring as much of that beautiful, luscious silence out into the material field as possible. And then when we come out slowly, that it helps the system integrate whatever experiences were there. All right, let's close our eyes. Thank you. Let's take a minute before slowly opening the eyes. Thank you to the source of creation for being everything. Thank you for being everyone here tonight live and everyone who will watch this recording in the future. Thank you for being the whole universe. Thank you for being the eternal tradition of wisdom that connects the absolute, unbounded, infinite, eternal self, source of creation, with the entire manifest, expressed level of creation. Thank you for this time that we have together, that we may use it in the most valuable, meaningful, supportive, efficient, successful manner. Thank you to each one of you for giving me the opportunity to be in this position at this time. I really appreciate it. I always get a lot out of these sessions. So, I appreciate getting to be of service. I appreciate being of service. And I've got my question box open here. Oh, aloha from Hawaii and Ottawa. Hey, 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 it's good to see everybody. Very sweet. I usually answer questions at the end of the session. So I'd like to kind of give everybody as much of direct energy healings and information on this topic. And then we'll look at the questions. There's some questions that came in via email. I see there's a great question that came in via the question and answer box as well. And everybody's most welcome to ask. Thank you. First, to put love and compassion in perspective with the energy healing process. We engage in energy healing because it supports the ability to sustain life. And sustaining life in all parts of the universe is overseen by the universal function of Dharma. And Dharma stands on the 4 pillars, 4 legs. Dharma, so it means this Sanskrit term Dharma means that which sustains the universe. And it stands on 4 pillars: truth, compassion, purity, and the ability to let go. Clearly, compassion is part of that story. And that's one of the reasons why we're looking at it. We spend a lot of time looking at truth because truth is of the 4 pillars of Dharma at this time in creation. The way the laws of nature are structured for us, truth is the one leg which is consistently stable. That means that no matter how inconvenient or unwanted the truth may be, whenever it comes, it brings benefit. It supports the evolutionary process. If it's really true, really rooted rooted in truth with a capital T, truth will always be a benefit. It will always help. And the thing about truth is that it's very stable, right? The truth is the truth. And so there's not a lot of leeway in there, you know. But the thing about healing is that we need to make changes. The whole principle of healing is something's going on, it's not okay, and it needs to change. And so that's why we're looking at compassion today as this element that plays into the energy healing process, because compassion catalyzes or starts to activate that process of change. The truth just stays the same. It's just like, I'm the truth. But then the compassion comes and it's like, yeah, but you know, like, you know, with love for the world and with love for all, we need to do something here to promote some positive changes and transformations. So this is the role of compassion. And like these three legs, compassion, orderliness, and being able to let go, unlike truth, which is good to any amount, any degree, in any situation, any circumstance, and any amount is always good. These three, they have to be regulated a bit. They have to be as if anchored to the leg of truth, like a splint, in order that we don't fall into either excess or deficiency, excess. We don't want to fall into either excess or deficiency with these three. With truth, it doesn't matter. Even a little teeny drop of truth brings some good, right? But here with these three values, compassion, purity, and letting go, it's possible to get out of balance. And of course, ill health is essentially a reflection of being out of balance in some way or another. So we need to talk about balance for a moment as well. And the first point is that the home of all the laws of nature, the home of the source of creation, is a field of absolute balance, supersymmetry, perfect balance. But it rises up into expressions in this material world, and it grows by pushing the edges. It grows and expands into and as this material world. And if the boundaries and the edges didn't get pushed, there wouldn't be any growth. So we have a kind of something that looks like a paradox, at least to me. At first it looks, and this is why I love being with you guys, because I'll find these paradoxes and I'll think, well, you know, when we have the webinar, we'll bring up the paradox, will come forward, and then we'll get a chance to explore it, you know, to dissect it a little bit and see what's there. So this is why I bring this to you, because it was right there at the forefront of my awareness even earlier today. That if the system goes out of balance, that causes illness. But that's not, I would say, we can describe if we want to dissect it just a little more carefully, the illness comes up as a byproduct of the physical form becoming overwhelmed by excess or deficiency, by an experience that's either too much or too little. Physiology becomes overwhelmed. And wherever the physiology becomes overwhelmed, if it's the circulatory system or the eyes or we don't know, something else, the skin or whatever area, the nervous system, whichever area feels overwhelmed, that's the area that possesses the greatest potential to come into a more absolute alignment with the divine, with being. So we need to look at that. Whatever area feels overwhelmed is the area that is next in line for the evolutionary change. And whatever area becomes overwhelmed will be the area that falls down and that tells you, oh, I don't feel okay, I'm not happy. There are correlations between the different parts of the body. and the different aspects or areas of one's personality in the field of consciousness. So we can, it's possible to like follow back, like to infer from the part of the body that's falling ill, like what is the part of consciousness that needs to be handled or dealt with. And in energy healing, we go there. We look to the area of the personality. We look to the, whatever is that area that has essentially lost contact or connection with wholeness, is suffering from an experience of separation, essentially. In a lot of New Age circles, the credit for losing connection with wholeness is given to the ego. And it's always defined, oh, it's the ego that's, you know, that sets up boundaries and separates us from the creator or from our highest potential or something like that. But they're always facets. They're always facets. And I think that as a structure itself, the ego isn't really an enemy by any means. It's simply playing its part to show you which part of your own self has lost connection with wholeness, so that awareness and attention can get into that area and start to re-establish integration with wholeness. And that's what awareness does. And so in energy healing, really the main tool that we use is awareness. And of course, the body's just set up to use that because the body falls ill, starts to experience pain, and pain draws awareness into the area that's feeling the pain. And so the awareness comes, and the awareness is very much it is actually being. It is actually that source of creation material that we have autonomy over to focus it up where we want to focus it. Okay. I know a lot of you've heard this before, and like I just keep putting it together in different combinations. But the important thing here is that we want to really sink into the ways that this collective, our healing collective, can work with the values, our own personal values, our own ability to experience love and compassion, and how we can cultivate and integrate in that area so that this valuable tool for energy healing can be as useful and accessible and integrated and powerful for each one of us. So that's kind of my intention for this healing session. So let's just take a minute. And I was checking with everyone's hearts and emotional bodies and center of feeling. And of course, we process our feelings in the limbic system, right behind the sinuses, just right in there in the center of the head. All the feelings, including the feelings of compassion and love. So I'm just checking in now. Checking in with everyone's sweethearts. Sweet or not sweet, or feeling very open or feeling very closed, or whatever condition we find the heart in at any given moment. It's the love in the heart that is the point where the divine shows up within each of us. It's an eternal connection. It doesn't even end when we leave the body. So amazing. It's absolutely beautiful to just focus the awareness in the middle of the chest, in the middle of the heart center. And just focusing awareness there illuminates truth. It illuminates the truth of who you are. The first thing that I see clearing from this area, or that I see illuminate, the first point, which is a blockage to the open flow and the power of compassion in the hearts of each of us, is such a long tradition of deficiency there, a long tradition of feeling that it's appropriate to humble, to be very small. It's appropriate. It's socially acceptable and justifies self-sabotage or self-sacrifice. It's especially that element of justifying self-sacrifice because essentially the first person that we heal is always ourselves. And there's something to be said for a person sacrificing themselves in order to save someone else. And how much of that saving of the other person in the long run ends up being actually valuable if you lose yourself in the process. So if one raises oneself up in the process of helping others, then it's a huge win that is felt at a cosmic level of creation. But if one pulls oneself down while pushing someone else up, the net result is still zero. Centuries, many centuries of ancestors, of cultural conditioning. And when we come across that type of centuries old conditioning, we find it's sitting in the epigenome. It's sitting systemically spread through the whole body in the field around the DNA. And for some people I'm noticing, and this is where this gets very interesting for me because we're in a group. So as I'm saying it, my awareness is flowing to these areas and I'm seeing things. And one of the things I'm seeing is that for all of us in this group, this particular imbalance that I've kind of isolated out, I've kind of pulled it like a little thread, you know, it's like, oh, there's a loose thread right there. I start pulling it out. It's for a lot of people here, it's more in some areas of the body than others. So the area that's given up to sacrifice is more inclined to be some particular area more than another. We save certain areas like, oh, I'm going to protect that part of myself, but oh, that part, it's okay. I can just, you know, cast it to the wolves or whatever. I'll tell you, for a lot of people, it's in the lower part of the torso area, like the abdomen, lower back, eliminative system, digestive system, lower digestive system. Kind of like a trash can there, you know, it's like, well, that's where all the waste goes. When I was a little girl, cartoons only came out on Saturday mornings. And there weren't a lot of choices of what cartoons you got to watch. There was only one station, if I recall correctly, that played cartoons. And you just watched you got what you got, you know? And when I got older and I had children of my own, I noticed I didn't tend to go back to a lot of those systems or those cartoons. And one of the reasons was I realized that a lot of the humor was very crude. And there was a lot of humor that involved people falling on their backside or getting kicked in their backside or all kinds of things like that. And that was considered quite hilarious by adults. They figured, oh, kids will love this. I mean, as a kid, I watched and I'm like, that's just so weird. But adults were like, oh, this is fun and kids will love it, you know? Yeah. Cultural conditioning. What is the potential? What is the dignity of that part of the body? Where is its connection to the source of creation? Hips, belly, thighs, buttocks, eliminative system, digestive system, reproductive system. I'm feeling grief releasing from that part of the body. The grief, the feeling, the emotion, it releases from the epigenome. And for those of you who aren't familiar, although some of you I'm sure have been with me here, epigenome being the electromagnetic spectrum that surrounds the DNA and tells the cells how to show up. It's highly responsive to your feelings. We're born with a particular type of epigenome in our body, but every experience that we have throughout our lifetime influences that epigenome and changes it. It cultivates that epigenome to be unique to each one of us. It's highly responsive to your feelings. And it's not that important whether your feelings are positive feelings or negative feelings. What's important is that your consciousness or your awareness is nicely anchored to the source of creation, so that whatever feeling comes up is a useful feeling. It's a feeling that promotes evolution. And sometimes the most evolution promoting feelings are the ones that are not as pleasant, right? Something comes up, it's like, oof, that's not good. I believe we need a change, right? I mean, if everything's groovy, we just keep rolling along as we were. But the minute things are not so good, we are inspired to seek solutions. So, the seeking of solutions is the skill that sets humans in a position or in a relationship with the divine that is really quite beautiful. A lot of beings seek various types of solutions. There are lots of smart beings in this world. They all do to a certain degree. But the way we as humans understand the universe and the penetrative capabilities of our minds and the way we deal with negativity when it arises by using it as an instrument to return the system back to the source of creation, essentially, to reintegrate. It's not that the system, it's not that you lose the details of life on the surface. It's that the details are illuminated by divine source, by the light of being, by the light of human awareness. So problems and situations, challenges, lessons fall into the same category as illnesses in this particular sense. And in energy healing, they're dealt with essentially the same way, that we bring awareness to that issue. We penetrate it with the light of our awareness, which is the light of the divine. And in so doing, we reestablish the connection with wholeness. And when the connection with wholeness is reestablished, whatever lack of refinement is present in the physical form is then given a context in which it can gracefully change. It can gracefully refine. The physical form refines, in this case, the epigenome of the cells, of the organs and the tissues and the structures of our bodies, particularly in the abdominal area. And there's a big energy center there. There's a big Mahamarma in that area, the Basti Mahamarma in the belly. So all this work is kind of, you could say it's kind of radiating forth to the tissues and the structure of the body through that energy center. The heart. The hearts are loving. We're loving our bodies. The heart creates that compassion and mercy that allow the flow of dignity In this case, dignity is one of the values that is most important for this part of the body. The love and compassion. You know, it's like a nurse who's caring for a patient, and the patient may be laying in a bed in a hospital gown and not feeling terribly dignified, but the nurse treats the patient with dignity and sees the dignity in that soul and realizes that this temporary condition is necessary in order for them to go through their transformation so that they can rise up, they can stand up again, take a shower, put on their clothes, and go and be in their life again in a way that's very dignified. Compassion and dignity together. Recognition. What goes along with dignity is the experience of being heard and recognized. The experience of being heard and recognized. It's very important. And what I see for so many people in this healing session were times in the early childhood where the transition into being heard had its challenges. When people, anytime we start in on some new endeavor, always, people make mistakes. We make mistakes when you try new things. That's just the way it be. And when people are very little, they haven't learned all the rules of polite behavior, polite society. And so little children are inclined sometimes to just let their truth out and let it be known, whatever the case. And sometimes that meets with, it's received well, and sometimes it's not. And it seems that there are enough people in this healing session who encountered a situation where their truth came to the surface and it was not well received. And particularly for those individuals whose truth came to the surface and it was not only not well received, it met with some form of discipline or punishment or something. When it met with punishment, that's really rough. Because what happens if you bring your truth to the surface and it meets with punishment is that it teaches you that your truth is not okay. There's something wrong with truth. There's something wrong with your truth. And in most cases, probably what was happening was the way the truth came to the surface was a little crude. Maybe it wasn't completely refined. Maybe it wasn't completely, cultivated according to the rules of the road at that time. But that's not a reason to punish a child. And so what we do in energy healing is we allow ourselves now as adults to be the adult for that child and to go back and to put the experience in perspective. If the adults in the situation met your truth with punishment, then your job is to go back and say to you, to hold you. We hold our small self in our heart. We hold our small self in our heart, and the compassion flows and the dignity flows and the answer flows. It's not your truth that was wrong. It was just the way it came out. It was just the delivery was a little rough. You can try again, and you can try delivering it in a different way and see how that goes. Your truth is beautiful, and your truth is important to me. And that, I think that's the crux of the healing here, is that our awareness is so fluid, so flexible, right? You can go through space and time like nobody's business. We go back to that little self. And anytime in multiple, maybe there are multiple times within the lifetime where your truth came to the surface and it met with some kind of suffering, and met with some kind of response that created suffering. So go back to all those points and you say to yourself, you feel it. It's not so much like with words, you don't really say it with words. It's more that it comes through the heart. And this is where the compassion starts to make sense in the healing process. It's through your own love. And it's your love. It's your love for truth with a capital T. It's your love for the truth that is the expression of the divine within you, essentially. That your truth is important to me. This truth is important. It's not only meaningful, it's valuable. It's valuable. You are valuable. And the sense of self, the sense of self-identity, can then reintegrate with the truth, with your truth. What happens when the child speaks the truth and it meets with a punishment is that the sense of who one is, the sense of self-identity, starts to separate from the truth. And it's such a wounding. It's such a wounding for the heart, right? And so this healing session, this time that we're in right now, is to go back to that little self and say, your truth is valuable to me. I need the truth in you. I need you in your truth. I need you. I love you in your truth. You're beautiful in your truth. And you are your truth. That truth with a capital T, that great divine truth, that cosmic truth, that universal truth of all creation is your truth. And it is you. It is me. It is my truth and it is me. And I am here because of that. And I'll tell you that your presence, the presence of your awareness right now with yourself in the past as a little person is deeply comforting. The compassion, the respect, the recognition that you feel is acknowledged and appreciated. And sometimes little people, they don't, especially the little boys, they don't know. If an experience is really deep, it's like a really deep emotional experience or a really big emotional experience, they're not inclined to bring that to the surface and say thank you. You might not get a big old thank you, big hug and kiss, thank you. You might end up getting a very deep shift, a very deep shift in the heart. A deep, healthy shift in the heart. So sweet. All right. So let's think. Thank you. That's about it. And my husband's making notes because sometimes we upload bits and pieces of these webinars to the YouTube channel. And I'm thinking that one might need a few cuts, but I think it's basically, it would be very sweet for everybody. There was something else that I wanted to share with you about this before we go into question and answer, because we still got a few minutes. I like to spend at least the last 15 minutes with questions. And that is, this is very exciting. In the weeks before a webinar, always there's some really beautiful knowledge or wisdom from the creation that comes regarding and around the topic. of the webinar, and it's really fun for me to get to share this with you. And for me, it starts out usually as a very deep abstract experience, and the webinars are an opportunity for me to put that experience into words, and share it, obviously. And the more abstract the experience is, of course, the more of a challenge it is for me to do that, but it's worth it. So I want to share this situation, which is why I had my husband go get the program from the concert. So we went to hear this 90-minute Gregorian chant. My daughter was singing in there. She had a part by Hildegard von Bingen. And if any of you are familiar with Hildegard von Bingen, well, God bless you, because she's quite the special lady who lived in the 1100s and was the first, she's normally regarded as the first female composer of all time, but it was one of the very early times of European history when notation, musical notation, first arose, and quite a fabulous woman. If you check her out, she's got artwork, and she built buildings, and she was the head of a convent, and she just did just an awful lot for a lot of people. And anyway, she wrote this incredible piece of music, and her intention for this piece of music was that when a person listened to the piece of music, we didn't know this before we went, we just knew that our daughter had a solo, something. When a person listens to this piece of music, they will be transformed. They will be healed. She was attempting to write music that would heal people just by listening to the music and following the story, of course. It's called Ordo. I'll show it to you. It's called Ordo Virtutum. It's some kind of German Latin. Yeah. Virtutum. And virtutum means virtue. And in short, the story goes that the soul had fallen from grace and is saved by the virtues. And the virtues, the soul then decides to adhere to the virtues and to embrace the virtues and to make them part of the soul's life. And the soul is saved. The soul gains entry into heaven. The soul gains a place in the lap of God. And the soul goes on to live well in that lifetime, rather than living a life of despair and morass and darkness. That's the story. As I was listening, the music was glorious, and my heart was so filled with love. And I knew that that feeling of, just my heart overflowing with love was part of my preparation for this session. I knew that. But as I listened, the music helped to sustain that condition of my heart feeling super, super full and just palpably full of love. And at first the love expanded out and it filled the auditorium, and it went out and it filled the whole world, and it was very big, and it was a very nice experience, and I was enjoying that. But then something really magical happened. The quality of love that was sustained by the music got finer and softer, much finer and much softer, and so delicate and so abstract that I didn't even recognize it anymore as love and compassion. It was just like pure amness, kind of, but it wasn't so much pure amness that it was unmanifest being. It wasn't quite unmanifest being. And what it reminded me of was this mathematical formula of getting from a number, say 2, down to 0. And you start by cutting it in half to 1, and then you cut it in half to a half. And then you go down to a quarter and an eighth and a 16th and a 32nd and a 64th. And you keep cutting that number in half, getting closer and closer and closer to 0, but you never make it to 0. And that's what the love was doing. It was going so fine that, you get down to some decimal, and I don't know, I'm not being a mathematician myself. I couldn't tell you what the decimal, but, suppose you get down to a decimal, it's like 0.0000000 something like that, like really, really fine. And so that's what the love was doing. It was getting down to that such a fine level that I was no longer able to really recognize that, oh, I started with 2. Like I knew I started with love. I knew that this thing started as love and it got finer, 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 finer. But at the point that I started to experiencing it very, 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 very fine, it was no longer even recognizable as love, really. And I had to just remember that it had been love at one point, or it had been recognizable as love at one point. But when it became so very fine, she was there. She was there. She was like, oh, you found me. I was like, oh, there you are. And of course, the text is being shown up on the screen in English, and there was plenty to explore with her about all that. It's not, when I found her, it was at such a fine level that it was not a level of self where she was something really separate from me particularly. It was more like she represented an entire cultural context in which this knowledge and this art form and this particular piece of music had reached us in 2022. At that point, it was really quite a self-referral experience. It was a self-interactive experience. I found her as a part of myself. And I was a part of herself. And I was a useful part of herself that allowed her to play her own devil's advocate as she's writing this music and figure out what she's really trying to say and how can she use her music to heal. It was quite an honor. The reason I tell you guys about this is because one of the values of energy healing is to simply bring our awareness to the truth of what and who we actually are. And when you know that you have the potential to feel love and compassion in the heart and feel it finer and finer and finer, so fine, so delicate, suspended in the light of the divine, so fine. This is a power. This is a gift. We don't know it's there until we discover it. One must discover it. And I would like very much that my discovery becomes your discovery. Now you know it's there. It is possible. You can go there with your love. And you all know that I do my night work. I've been working with everybody even since before we started this session tonight, even last night and the night before, checking in with all of you and going in together. And feeling that love go so fine. You are suspended. It's like being suspended, breathless. So fine. And honestly, during the Ordo Virtutum, I don't know Latin. We need to get Matthew in here to do the Latin. Anyway, during that course, I was suspended breath, 90 minutes, nearly. Every once in a while, it was like but then it was just Anyway, you can look it up on YouTube, I suppose. It may be worth a watch. I found it riveting. Okay, guys. That's what I wanted to share with you. May this become something that you have access to, that's useful to you. There's a lot in it. Like I've been exploring this. This concert was the 10th of November, and here we are on the 18th. So 8 days ago. So I've been obviously enjoying exploring with this for 8 days. And I'll tell you something, there is power in it. It starts with love, but it can become anything, anything. The most robust health, taken all the way down to that fine level. Anything, your heart's desire. Absolutely powerful. Your pure potential, right? Whatever is important, whatever is meaningful to you, whatever aligns you with divine intent and aligns you with the evolutionary flow of creation, down to the finest. And it's like, I say it's a gift because it's a gift that's shared between the divine and the individual. It's a gift that integrates the connection between individuality and universality. It's a gift that keeps on giving. It's like one of those gifts that's good no matter which way you turn it around. It's like, oh, it's good on that side. Oh, it's good on that side. It's like, it's good on all the sides. May you find great benefit in it. All right, let's look at some questions. I'll start up here. I've spent decades in introspection, self-development, attitude improvement, expanding awareness, and in healing. Yet I feel like I am moving through molasses. Why am I so slow and not reaching my potential in the way I envision? I feel that the first thing that comes with that is using half of the potential, but not all of the potential, because the darker side of self is the side that lets you move faster. And I don't mean I don't mean it like Star Wars, like, oh, he went over to the dark side. I don't mean it like that. What I mean is that it is those moments when you really feel awful are the moments where the potential growth is the greatest, right? And so, you know, one of the reasons that we spend, and I would imagine, I could look for a show of hands, but I'm not sure if you guys raise hands that anybody sees it but me. But I would imagine that if I said, oh, how many people have spent decades on introspection, self-development, and attitude improvement? Yeah, many, many, many hands come up. Many hands come up. So what it really amounts to, the decades of work amounts to oscillating back and forth between developing your consciousness and refining the nervous system, and developing the consciousness and refining the nervous system. Because that oscillation leads to a quality of experience that is ever better aligned with wholeness. It's ever better aligned with your divine potential, essentially. It doesn't necessarily mean that life doesn't continue to bring challenges. And it doesn't mean that you don't feel annoyed sometimes, or anxious, or angry. It's that when you feel those feelings, you do respond differently. That when you're a little kid, when you're 2 and you feel angry, you lay down on the floor and kick and scream and make a big scene that's embarrassing for your mama. but when you're like, you've been doing this for decades and you feel angry, you say, oh, that means that some healthy boundaries need to be set. Okay, I need to do some introspection here and figure out where the boundaries, sorry, my camera just went out. Where do those boundaries need to be set? And quickly and efficiently start moving in the direction of problem solving. Isn't that funny? Because here I am problem solving my technology. Haha. Oh, no coincidence there. And look at all that fancy business. Hang on. I didn't mean to turn myself into a pumpkin. Sorry, everybody. Oh, that's a little better. All right. So you see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? Am I too blue to you? Because I look just right on my camera. Okay, hang on. I'll just bring it up a little bit. How's that? That's fair. Okay, good. Right. So from the pumpkin to the snowman, and then we find our way back into balance in the center, right? So like that's essentially it. When those discordant feelings come up, they are an indication that there's a little excess or deficiency somewhere in the system. We have to figure out where's the point of balance. And it's just so funny, isn't it, that the technology went, oh, here, let's just like example it for everybody. But the thing is, you can imagine if you were a speaker in front of hundreds of people and you're putting a presentation up, which you didn't plan ahead of time very much, and all of a sudden the technology goes awry. What do? I mean, it could be very stressful, or it could be just like, ha ha, oh, the universe is joking again. But I mean, anyway, I did it enough times that it doesn't bother me. So, but that's the point of all those years and all that time spent, on self-development and introspection and so forth. It's not that things don't go awry, because the universe never stops laughing at itself, but and it never stops evolving, and it never stops caring more about evolution than about your comfort. So, but we do get used to, as the back and forth between expanding consciousness and refining the nervous system, we do get used to problem solving and maintaining that connection to wholeness, even when those discordant feelings are there. And I think that's the main point about the discordant feelings, is that when awareness is connected to wholeness and the discordant feelings are there, they become the instruments for evolution. So it's not about Star Wars, oh, he went to the dark side. It's that he used, and this is what the hero does, right? This is what the hero who uses the force, who's on the light side, does, is they use their darker feelings and their difficult moments, they use them to be victorious, to create the highest good, to work for good, to work for the good of all mankind, to work on behalf of the intentions of the divine to evolve in this creation. So my suggestion is, the autonomic nervous system can be cultivated to respond to the challenges and negativity. And if you feel my son said one of my sons the other day was saying, I like it when I feel jealous. I'm like, why do you like it when you feel jealous? He's like, because it shows me what I want in my life. It shows me where I would like to aim my energies. And I thought, oh, that's beautiful. So it's like, yeah, you can say the feeling of jealousy comes up, but it's not so much like I want to take what that person has away from them. It's like he doesn't respond to it that way. He says when he feels that feeling, then he knows, oh, that's something I would like to cultivate in myself. That's something I would like to create in my own reality, something like that. And so the feeling of jealousy, rather than hindering the evolutionary process, becomes a tool for evolutionary change and good, something like that. And also all the negativity, all those, every single time that little loop is created from the heart up to the limbic system and back, and then the whole autonomic nervous system in this area. We're just looking into the, for everybody, the autonomic nervous system, that cultivating that response in the autonomic nervous system of, ooh, I just feel so frustrated about that. And then cultivating in the nervous system, okay, that's the opportunity. That's the point. That's the launching point for my evolution to move forward really quickly. And I mean, that's the value of living at this time in creation, this Kali Yuga time. There are times in creation where life is a lot easier. It's a lot softer. It's a lot more gentle. And people just don't evolve as fast. It's so easy. But here is, not so easy. So we're constantly being given opportunities for amazing development, amazing growth. And part of that story is, how does each person's nervous system respond and react to those experiences that are challenging and difficult? Be the mama that you are. Be a mama. You can do it. Okay. I hope that was good. I hope that helped. These days, truth seems to be questioned, though. Well, yes. And is that not the truth? Yeah. So, okay. Remember I said there were times in history when life is so much easier, right? And then people don't evolve as fast. Well, there are times in history when all four of the legs of Dharma stand strong. That means you can use any one of them for any problem, to any degree and any amount, a little bit or a lot, and it will always bring benefit. That's not this time. One at a time. If we look, Tom, can you put a note to put the link to Dharma from the knowledge base in with the recording? Because anyway, it's all laid out there. But in the times of history, what happens is first one of the legs falls down, and then only 3 stand strong. And then another one of the legs falls down, and then only 2 are standing strong. And then another leg falls down, and now only 1 is standing strong. And guess what? It's under attack. This one leg, the leg of truth, at this time in history, when all the others have fallen down and are kind of essentially broken and need to be splinted over to the leg of truth, this is the time that the leg of truth is under attack. Yeah, and I appreciate that you brought that point up, because it's one of the things that I think is actually very useful for all of us, because so many of us have spent our whole lifetime cultivating truth and cultivating our nervous systems and cultivating the highest spiritual value within ourselves that we can. Within oneself, it becomes harder to find really challenging problems and situations. And nature, I'm not saying that because I want, please take it easy on me. No, but you know what I'm saying, that like, what I find is that when my computer clicks on in the morning, there's this unwanted, uncalled for, and unasked for news feed that pops up. But I usually give myself a minute and I kind of check headlines. And I focus on the ones that make me feel the most helpless. Because I realize that that's a point in my own consciousness where I can cultivate a greater capacity to heal the collective. I recently learned, and it shows how out of the loop I am, that about 10 years ago, there was some kind of big scandal on Facebook, because it turned out that Facebook was throwing different types of information in front of people randomly without kind of like telling them or giving them choices or something, and was testing how many people, like where the most clicks came, like what kinds of things people tended to click on. I didn't know this was happening, but anyway, evidently it was. And one of the things that was discovered was people were more likely to click on headlines and links and whatever, images or whatever, that made them feel angry. Isn't that interesting? I thought, that's so interesting. They didn't click on the good news, on the cute kittens or something. They were more likely to click on something that made them angry. Well, that was 10 years ago. And I guess Facebook got in trouble and they're like, oh, we're so sorry. We won't do it again. Now we've got all the information we want from you or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what Facebook said. I mean, God bless them. Let's hope that they're ethical. But in the meantime, some people in the media got onto that and went, oh, so that's a thing, right? Like if something happens, maybe just a sort of neutralish thing. Oh, the Congress passed a bill, passed some kind of bill in Congress. Can we spin it in a way that makes people angry? Is there a way that we can take this bill that got passed and put it up as a headline so that it raises ire in the viewer? Because if we can do that, it'll get more clicks. And if we get more clicks, we'll get more bucks. And we'll be more famous as a news outlet than the next news outlet. So this has evidently been going on for like at least 10 years since Facebook came out with this information. And it's interesting. And it's kind of like, in a way, no surprise that there's been a lot of, that the news kind of, has a divisive effect. There's no surprise. It's no surprise. And if any of you guys out there, and I try to do this, and I know I've learned it from my sons and my husband too, he's very nice about this, is that if there's something that happens in the news, if you can find a news article that approaches it from one perspective and also the other perspective at the same time, if you can approach it from both perspectives at the same time and look at the same article from one person, from the left perspective and from the right perspective, you can often get a fairly clear picture of what that particular news article is about. And what I found is very often it's just not that dramatic. The left makes it look a certain very much dramatic, and the right makes it look a certain very much dramatic. And the truth is, it wasn't really that dramatic. It was just something that happened. Interesting. It's very interesting. We live in a very interesting world. So yes, the truth is being questioned, but I think part of our job is to get down and to isolate the truth and figure out how to separate in our minds the spin that's on that truth, to see the spin immediately. Oh, there's a spin on that thing. So yeah, never mind the spin. I just want to know the facts, something like that. It's hard though. It's very tricky. It's very tricky. And I'm not going to give an example because it's too politically fiery, so I'm not going to give that example. But anyway, let's go to another question. Pushing away uncomfortable feelings and engaging in negative behavior and feelings disconnect us from the divine, resulting in imbalance. Is that correct? Oh, thank you for the question. I guess I kind of answered that question. The principle is that the connection to the divine stands independent of any feelings ever. Feelings are small. Feelings are fleeting. They come and they go. But the connection to the divine is eternal. It stays and it stays and it stays. What causes the imbalance is when the actual physical structure of the body finds itself overwhelmed by the feeling to the point that one loses connection with the divine. One forgets, oh yeah, I'm actually divine grace incarnated, right? When we forget that moment, we get so caught in that thing, that's when the problems arise, illness arises, problems arise. And that's the point where the divine looks at you and says, oh, wait, my human is overwhelmed. Oh dear, it's time to bring them home. I need to get that particular human who's feeling a little overwhelmed there. I need to get them to start to rest. I know, I'll make them sick. If they get sick, they'll have to rest. They'll have to pull back and they'll have to take a little time for themselves. And that'll help put them on the path of coming back to my heart, something like that. And it's not that we're that even as much separated from the divine as I would have made that little description out to be. It's more like the divine is like, how far can I push myself? How far can I extend in the direction of excess or deficiency in this material world before I get out of my comfort zone and I'm no longer feeling stable? And that's the moment that we feel overwhelmed by emotions. And the divine does that. It does everything. It makes the dark emotions and the light emotions and everything. It's so bizarre that it does that. And of course, we feel as individuals, one can find themselves feeling a little pushed around by the creation. But if we handle the pushes, we use them, leverage them as an instrument for gaining stability, then the net result is that after a while, we can't be pushed around. It doesn't matter how the news story comes. One looks at it and goes, well, there's the nugget of truth and there's the spin. And I'm keeping the truth, and the spin can go off and can spin off wherever it wants to go. So something like that. That's a great question. Thank you. Thank you. It's beautiful. The other thing that question is making me think about is that there's this little pattern. It's in the epigenome. I see it. I see it. I see it. I see it in you. And this pattern in the epigenome is, if I become overwhelmed, if I push, if the divine is living itself through me, and it's living itself to the point of excess or deficiency so much that I lose my connection to the divine, then that means that I am somehow a fallen creature, or weak, or insufficient, or disposable, or unacceptable. And it's that patterning, that's really, really, really old patterning. It doesn't mean that. It means that you were, that you are, that you, in that moment, you have been chosen to be the instrument of integration of divinity into some area of creation that had not previously integrated the divine. Very powerful. Very powerful. Very powerful. And yeah, there's a sacrifice involved, right? Because if we become overwhelmed, almost always the path back involves having to go through this purification process, and we have to go through purification, and we have to reintegrate with the divine. And it gets soft. It can't, energy healing is really useful to make that process softer. That's what energy healing's for. You spot it early, right? You get used to bringing the awareness down to those really fine levels. And then you see that little thing coming up and you go, wait a minute, that's the sort of thing that could really overwhelm me. So what do I need to do? As it rises, I need to evolve and develop my own stability and adaptability as it's rising, so that the momentum of that particular impulse rising to the surface doesn't lose the divine grace that's within it. The momentum itself comes from the pure energy that comes from the source of creation. As soon as the overwhelm hits the system, the physical system gets hit with the overwhelm, then the momentum is also lost. The expansion of totality or wholeness into the material creation is lost at that point. And what happens if the impulse rises from the source of creation, right? So it's expanding, 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 expanding. And then something happens and the momentum is lost. What happens? Oh, then it's got to turn around and start to contract and contract and come back home again. I say integration. We integrate wholeness. And when that integration of wholeness occurs, it also comes along with refinement of the physical form, so that the next time that impulse rises, the physical form is primed. It's in a better position to handle that rise of that impulse of creation. I'm seeing it in context of all people on earth. It's not that your nervous system has to be 100% absolutely perfectly refined. It's that it just has to be more refined than the next person. So it is. So it is. This purification of creation is the purification of creation. Oh, that's a little challenge. There's a little challenge for Dorothy to deal with. And anybody else, any of the rest of you who want to join me. There's a shift taking place right now. The compassion is expanding right now. Oh my gosh. And I see we're over time too. I'm so sorry. So sorry I kept you guys over time. And also so many wonderful questions coming in. And I've got 2 more questions down here. So I'm gonna, that's a really interesting point to end a webinar on. Usually I ended on a really happy note, but anyway, let's look at this tomorrow. I, as usual, bless you all and bless you for all your wonderful questions that have come in. As you know, I usually start my Saturday session with questions. I start my Saturday and we just do questions straight up all the way through, questions and healings, questions and healings. Also, it's kind of interesting that this point came up right at the end. It's a big point and it requires some time to unfold, and it's overtime. So let us explore in our dream and sleep state tonight. And when we come back tomorrow, we'll take another look at it and see if some nice solutions haven't arisen from the source of all solutions, the source of infinite solutions, not just one good possible outcome, but infinite number of good possible outcomes, and which one would be the best aligned with the highest future, the highest good for all of mankind. May it be. Thank you, everyone, for being with me. Good night. Come back and see me tomorrow. And if you don't come back and see me tomorrow, you will get the recording anyway, so you can see tomorrow anyway. All right. Have a lovely sleep for all of those of you in the Western Hemisphere, and a lovely day for those of you on the Pacific Rim and everybody else in between. Thank you, everyone. See you soon. Bye.